My dad was lying in a polished box, hair combed, suit buttoned, just like he liked to be seen. People moved around me in slow, useless loops. Someone kept saying sorry. Someone else kept saying he was a good man. I smiled because that's what you do at funerals. I hugged people I barely knew. I held my sister's hand because she had always been the one who could stop me from falling. She slipped something into my palm like it was nothing. Paper folded small, edges soft. I opened it with fingers that didn't belong to me anymore. You're not his child. Those 4 words felt like a punch and a burning lamp at the same time. I kept looking around for some mistake, for a prank, for Dad to sit up and laugh and tell me I'm dramatic. He didn't. No one else saw the note. My sister's face was flat, sorry without tears. She said she couldn't say it in front of everyone. She mouthed that she loved me. She closed her eyes. I put the note in my purse like you put dangerous glass somewhere safe. I thought of being his daughter like I thought of breathing. He wasn't perfect. He was not tender. He was the man who taught me how to change a tire at 17, who signed every permission slip, who sat in the back of my graduation when my mother stayed home. He taught me how to be solid. People called him strict. I called him reliable. Being his child was quiet armor. Now it had holes. At the wake, a cousin nudged me, asked silently if it was true. A neighbor I hadn't spoken to in 10 years stepped forward with a knowing look and a question that felt like acid. I lied and said I must have misread it. My sister kept looking at me like she expected me to explode. I didn't explode. I went upstairs, to the tiny bathroom, shut the door, held the note, and pretended like I could breathe. 2 hours later, in the dim light of my kitchen, my phone buzzed. My best friend Mara had been sitting in the front row. She texted to tell me she saw my sister slip me that paper. She asked if I wanted her to come over. She didn't judge. She sat with me on the couch and made me tea like I was 7. Her hands were steady. That steadiness became the first rope. My sister admitted she had found something in Mom's old cedar chest. Adoption papers. Mom's name with another man's name. A hospital band with a different truest name on it. She said she was trying to protect me from a public humiliation. She said she was trying to break the news privately. I asked why she told me with folded paper in a funeral hallway. She said she panicked. She said she didn't know how else. She said Dad had always been proud and deserved the truth. My mouth tasted like dirt. I wanted proof. She said she had a private test, hair comparison from something Dad kept in a drawer. She didn't show me the file. She said it was complicated, that the lab's results were clear. She said it didn't change what Dad had been, but it changed who I was. Rumors spread faster than grief. By the next morning, an aunt who had been louder than most posted the hint and then the question on social media. A cousin sent me a screenshot asking me if at least I knew. At the funeral the next day, someone asked if Dad had known. No one could answer. A lawyer appeared, wearing a somber suit and a face like a courtroom portrait. He told us the estate was frozen until executor issues were clarified. He asked if there was any documentation. My sister produced a scanned PDF of a paternity report from a private lab, the kind you find in the back of a late-night ad. It compared Dad's DNA from a hair sample to mine and said no match. There was a moment where I felt nothing at all. Then the room turned into water. My sister's eyes were small and full of something like triumph. People looked at me like I was a riddle. My mouth opened and closed. I flew apart inside. My best friend called me, and I laughed because my brain wanted to puncture on the floor. I remember Mara telling me to breathe out loud. She told me to go through Dad's things. She told me to look for a sealed letter. She told me lawyers took time, but a sealed letter was immediate truth in our family. Dad liked writing those. He had written one for my college, but he had never given it. It was his thing. Put the important words in handwriting so no one could argue with them later. I broke into his study at midnight. I know that sounds dramatic, but grief makes you do illegal things. The desk smelled like aftershave and pencil shavings. Hidden under a stack of tax papers was a shoebox with photos, a dog-eared receipt for a ring he'd never bought, and a thin envelope that said, "For you," in spidery script. Inside, he had written the one thing I needed and had never known to ask for. He wrote that blood wasn't his measure. He wrote he had been there when I was born, that he had signed forms, that he chose me every day. He remembered the scraped knee in 2nd grade, the college loans he paid, the night he sat with me through a blackout in a cheap dorm. He wrote that the name on my birth certificate didn't matter. He signed his name, and then taped a small list of accounts and a note saying he wanted both of us to have equal shares. He had underlined the word equal. I cried until my throat hurt. That letter felt like holy proof, the proof that the life we had together mattered more than genomes. I slept with the letter under my shirt like contraband. I woke feeling a little brave. Then the holy shit moment detonated. My sister called me from the reception hall and told me people were whispering that my not his child paper had come from me. She said someone had posted a photo of the note online, that a relative had shared it and described it as letters found in my purse. The funeral photographer had captured me with the paper visible for a live stream. I hadn't noticed all the eyes. A stranger on the internet wrote that a friend of a friend belonged to a family that had used genetic tests to deny people their inheritance. A comment led to a local tabloid. They put my face next to the word scandal. My employer called. My boss said we needed to talk about professionalism. Work turned into a river of quiet emails. My phone became a ringing beast. I felt like an imposter in my own life. I kept thinking, if Dad wasn't my biological father, then what had I been building my identity on? I wanted to rip out the part of me that referred to him as mine. I wanted to hide. The pressure tightened. Friends I thought would stand by me retreated into whisper rooms. My brother, who had always been neutral, stopped returning my calls. I had a choice. I could either collapse into the direction everyone else wanted me to go, or I could try to make Dad's choice mean something. I chose the latter. Mara drove me to a legal clinic. We spoke to an estate attorney who looked at Dad's letter and the scanned paternity report and said we had a fight. The lab my sister used was not accredited for forensic evidence. He said private labs can be faked or mislabeled. He said sealed letters carried weight in probate if executed properly. It was messy, but it was something. We filed to have the private lab results independently verified. We requested a chain of custody on the hair sample. My sister was furious. She accused me of trying to bury the truth. She accused me of lying to make myself comfortable. She told relatives that I was clinging to a fake letter to steal my place. The family divided like a road split by a crevasse. There was a low point where I sat on Dad's back porch at 3 a.m. and burned old photographs. It felt like a symbolic death. I set fire to the idea that who I was depended on blood. It was a small, furious ceremony. I cried for the daughter I thought I was, then for the person I refused to become. Then the lab called. The private lab my sister used had no physical sample. It had a result sheet without any chain of custody. The supposed hair had been taken from a sweater in the closet and labeled with a false timestamp. The investigator said someone could buy a result packet online and change a file name. Someone could fabricate evidence. The court wouldn't accept it without something more. In a mediated hearing, my sister produced the original PDF again and asked for the estate to be divided according to biological heirs. I presented Dad's sealed letter, the signed college loan receipts, bank transfers in his name for my tuition, and 2 witnesses, Dad's neighbor and his mechanic, who said he always introduced me as his daughter. They remembered him teaching me how to change a tire and how he'd sobbed quietly in the hospital. The mediator examined handwriting, signatures, and the weird human thing we had, a life lived together. My sister lashed out in the room. She admitted she had been angry for a long time. She said Dad had always seemed to love me more. She said she had been lonely and jealous. She said she had wanted to make sure the estate leaned toward her. She said she had convinced herself that tearing us apart would make her the one left standing. She didn't apologize. She offered reasons. Everyone heard them. The mediator ruled that the sealed letter, combined with financial history and testimony, showed Dad intended equal treatment. The estate would be divided. It wasn't a clean victory. It wasn't even all mine. But it was proof enough that the life I had mattered to him. After the hearing, my sister stopped speaking to me. She sent one message that said good luck and then blocked me. The family fractured along lines that silence couldn't stitch back together. I lost friends and gained a clarity that hurt like a brand. I went to the cemetery on my own 1 week later. The stone had his name and dates. I placed his letter on the granite and left one cufflink, the one he always fumbled in his pocket when nervous. I said out loud that I knew he chose me. I said I forgave him for not being tender. I forgave myself for needing proof. The opposite of that first image in the chapel wasn't a neat triumph. It was a quieter, steadier thing. I set boundaries. I stopped answering calls from relatives who wanted to relitigate the past. I kept the letter tucked in a safe. I kept Mara on speed dial. I filed to protect my portion and turned my energy toward living the life Dad thought I could handle. Steady, responsible, unafraid. My sister's note at the funeral did what it was meant to do. It shattered a room and forced us to look at the shards. But in the shards, I found proof that mattered more than DNA. I found bank statements and a handwritten promise and a life traced in small acts. I learned that being someone's child was not a fact on a paper, but 1,000 tiny decisions. At the grave, I left the note beneath the cufflink. I brushed soil over it and pulled my coat tight. I breathed. The panic had loosened its grip. I had been given an identity by a man who had chosen me, and now I had chosen back to be the person he thought I could be. I walked away with the letter in my bag and no need to prove anything to strangers online. I had the only thing that ever really mattered, the truth of how I'd been loved.